I'd like to call to order the meeting of Bellbrook City Council. Today is Monday, December the 9th, 2019. Will you join the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Pam, could we call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Greenwood.
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter.
Here.
Mrs. Seeger-Lawson.
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen.
Here.
Mayor Schwaller.
Here. We have a motion to excuse Mr. McGill on vacation this week.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Mrs. Middlestetter to excuse Mr. McGill from the City Council meeting of December 9th, 2019. This was seconded by Mrs. Seeger-Lawson. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Sorry, Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger-Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. We have before each of you the approved and revised work session and regular meeting minutes of November 12th, 2019, as well as the regular meeting minutes of November 25, 2019. Does any member of council have any corrections or additions to these minutes?
None, Mayor.
None, Mayor.
Seeing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. Mayor's announcement, special guests. Tonight we have two special guests. First up is Chris Ewing from the Chamber of Commerce.
Get my address. Okay. This is different. I'm Chris Ewing. I'm the director of the Bellbrook Sugar Creek Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just here to fill you in on what's going on in the next few days, the next few weeks. As you know, Christmas in the park is this weekend. For those of you who are new to the community, we used to have a big celebration. It was called Christmas in Bellbrook. It ran Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For those of you that remember Burma Fernandez, she was the one that started that back in the 1980s. We're hoping, there's a few more activities this weekend, but we're hoping with the revitalization group starting and all this excitement happening in Bellbrook, that maybe that event can come back full force sometime in the next year, and hopefully, definitely in the next 2 years. So anyway, but what we've got going on this next weekend is Friday, December 13th, at the Winners Library at 2 o'clock, they start crafts. At 4 o'clock, they're having musicians come in from doing all around the world Christmas music, harps, bells, different things. Those are all open to the public. Saturday, December 14th, from 12:30 to 2:30 is the Open Arms Free Clinic. For those of you that don't know, Bellbrook has a free clinic. It's open on Tuesday nights and Saturdays. This open house will be, it's at the building, what is that long building called next to Skyline? The medical building.
It's a medical building. I don't know the name of
It
it.
used to have a name. Anyway, it's next to Skyline, and that open house will be Saturday from 12:30 to 2:30. There will be refreshments. Wright State medical students are involved with that free clinic, so they will be there to answer questions. There's a wellness clinic on Saturday mornings that they run, and they will be there for part of that. But it's your opportunity to come and meet the volunteers, the staff, the medical staff that's there. That's this Saturday from 12:30 to 2:30. Then we have Christmas in the Park, and that is from 5 to 7, and that's in Bellbrook Park. As always, there's a tree lighting, Santa, ornament contest, and that's where they changed this up this year. You used to do a gingerbread house contest, now it's an ornament contest. So as long as you bring an ornament that's smaller than, like 4 by 4 is the rule, and your family does it, and they've got prizes and raffle prizes, so that's the contest this year in the actual park. I mean, hot chocolate, baked goods, caroling. The caroling will start about 6:15, and then it'll move down into downtown Bellbrook, and Mike Saban will be leading that. So eventually you'll end up back at Bellhop for more hot chocolate. So that will be on Saturday from 5 to 7. Hopefully there's snow. They're not calling for snow right now. But anyway, also the museum will be open, but I don't know the hours.
The same time the music at the Bellbrook.
The park,
at
okay,
the
so
park
that'll be
is open.
5 to 7, the museum will be open.
Yep.
For all the, and there's the little toboggan.
Yeah,
Is
the-
there to take pictures, so that will be open.
And they
at the
have
same
hot
time.
chocolate and cookies too.
And they have hot chocolate, so if the park runs out, you can go there. Anyway, so that's all 5 to 7 on Saturday. And then changing gears, flipping into 2020, mark your calendars for Sugar Maple Festival, April 24th, 25th, and 26th. And the Chamber is going to be sponsoring a pet fair on Friday, so there's always a dog show at 6 o'clock on Friday of Sugar Maple. We will be doing a pet fair, which will bring vendors in, so as all the people are bringing their animals, there'll be an opportunity for them to meet with a lot of different veterinarian type products and things like that. So that will be going on that weekend in April. Also mark your calendars for the community garage sale, big event. I get calls from all over the country. People want to know when our community garage sale is. So it's Thursday, May 21st, Friday, May 22nd, and Saturday, May 23rd. And there will be sign-ups on the Chamber website starting probably after February. So if anybody tries to sign up before that, probably won't work. But you can sign up on that to check which days you want to have your garage sale. We get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in this community, as well as we usually average about 120 garage sales around here, and people get rid of a lot of stuff, so it's a good opportunity to clean out all your stuff and get rid of it that weekend. We will have the new directory at the Sugar Maple Festival. That's been in process for a while. If you have any questions or need any additional information, you can always check our website at bellbrooksugarcreekchamber.com. And we want to personally thank Donna and Daryl for your years of service to the city.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? That's it.
A lot going on, thank you, Chris. Next up, we have the holiday window display. Is that Mr. Dart, or is that gonna be Pastor Saban, or both?
Both, I think. You wanna get our- Okay. I was gonna have my dad here tonight, but he's tied up. He's the one that put the main window display together, so. Seems to be, everybody's excited about coming to look at the windows, and we were gonna help out with Christmas in Bellbrook this week, so we did a little sample this past Saturday and had people down and had a sign, and there's a contest that if you find 2 Santas in the manger scene, you get registered for a prize. And Mike donated a gift certificate, and we put a couple other prizes in there, so that seems to get some interest of people looking
neat.
in the windows. And then we're gonna do some charity collection work, and Mike's been helping with that. I'm kind of administrating the collection labor part of it, and then that'll go to the community center.
Family Resource Center.
Sure,
and
Family
the
Resource
Children's
Center.
Health Clinic.
And then one of the, just so that there's no confusion, I guess, one of the guys that works with us, he's dresses as Santa, and then he also works at a church off a bigger road. And they get an overflow of coats and different items, so they get some things they can't use, some they can. Then my mom does a couple drives at Crossview Church out on Wilmington Pike and near Ferry Road, Social Road, sorry. And they have a program where they do, it's foster kids and parents, so a lot of foster kids are in need. So they take extra coats, but then they get things that they can't use. So for the resource center, we're gonna figure out a way to use the overstock and back and forth. And then they also do an outreach for children that go home hungry for the weekend, and that's a fairly big issue, especially in Warren County. So we'll have things maybe that get dropped off that we can give to them, and back and forth with the Kettering Church. So, and my dad has gone over and above with his knee pads on his knees. I think I wore him out, but he's very excited and met a lot of people in town. It's amazing how many people come down and talk to him and us the past couple weeks. And then a fella who's had a restaurant in Dayton for a long time, he is teaching us how to do chestnuts on the fire, like the song, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Forrest came down and saw the action, tried one out, but they're pretty good. So we
Yeah.
hope that is a little donation raising for whatever the resource center might come up with. So trying to do a couple things and keep everybody the holiday spirit. So that was it.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good, we like the window, good job with it.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. Tell your dad thanks.
Thank you.
I will.
Next up, Public hearing of ordinances, ordinance number 2019-21. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2019-21, an ordinance approving the appropriations of the City of Bellbrook for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. Whereas the City Council has reviewed the proposed 2020 annual budget, and whereas the City of Bellbrook desires to adopt the 2020 annual budget and authorize related appropriations, now therefore the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that to provide for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bellbrook during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, the following sums be and they are hereby set aside to be appropriated as follows. And over here we have the different funds with a grand total of all funds of $3,950,059. Other expenses of $2,771,891. Transfers of $425,000 for total 2020 appropriations of $7,146,950. Section 2, that the Finance Director is hereby authorized to make payments from any of the foregoing appropriations upon receiving proper documentation approved by the officers authorized by law to approve the same. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. And I think we have the budget presentation tonight.
We sure do. So the budget presentation was also put in the council packet. The full budget can be found on the city's website. It was published last week. It's on the City of Bellbrook's website, which is cityofbellbrook.org, and then there is, under departments, there's a finance tab, and there's a 2020 annual budget and capital improvements. And this shows detailed line item revenues and expenditures for the entire year, and then the full capital program in the back. And then in the front of the book, there's also a lot of different charts and things like that, many that we'll see tonight. So the presentation is also on the website as well. So it's in with the council packet, and then it's also on the finance page for easy finding later. And then you can also get to a lot of old budget materials in there too. So we've got approximately 19 slides to go through. So this doesn't get into the individual line items. It's more of a broad overview of the budget. So when we look at the 2020 budget summary of all funds, we are looking at a net difference from our beginning balance, and then looking at our budgeted income and expenses of a negative $197,162. That's 2.7% of our budgeted expenses for 2020. So typically, the way that I've approached budgeting is to be conservative, and so 2.7% is going to generally be a balanced budget. At the end of the year, that likely would not be a negative, but will likely add to reserves overall. So the estimating ending balance after 2020 is $5,664,951. So we have 12 total funds. 6 are set to add to reserves or break even, and then we've got 6 that will deficit spend. That will be police pension, fire, capital improvement, motor vehicle, and then the performance bond fund. So that's the broad overview of the overall picture of the 2020 budget. And then when we look at the next slide, which is the property tax supported funds, this includes the general fund, the police fund, the fire fund, and then the capital improvement fund. So those funds have an estimated beginning balance of $2.7 million, and then the difference between the budgeted income and expenses for 2020 is a net deficit of $234,191, and so that estimated ending balance is $2,475,394. So the general fund will add an estimated $93,000 to reserves, and police will deficit spend by about $68,000, or 3.8% of their expenditures that are budgeted. The pension fund by a minimal $2,000, fire by $74,000, or 5% of their budgeted expenses. And then capital improvement, that fund is a relatively healthy fund. It's got a healthy balance, and that will deficit spend by $183,000. So that's the bulk of it, but nothing major in terms of what that fund balance would be left with. So then moving on to our transportation-related funds, these have a smaller fund balance. This includes our streets, our state highway fund, and our motor vehicle or permissive tax fund. So those three funds are rolled up into these totals. Beginning balance is $446,601, and then the difference between our budgeted income and expenses are a deficit of $3358. So minimal amount there, which should balance by the end of the year. So streets and state highway fund will both add to reserves by a total of $12,000 and $1,800 respectively. The motor vehicle permissive tax fund will deficit spend by about $17,000. But we're pulling engineering fees for the Little Sugar Creek Road project out of there. So typically there's not much spent out of the permissive tax fund. There's only certain roads, there's only a handful of roads that we can spend that money on. And Little Sugar Creek is one of them, so we're going to pull some from that to be able to pay for the extra engineering in 2020 to continue to look at Little Sugar Creek Road. So that will dip in a little bit there. If we look at the next slide, it's our waste collection fund. It's got a beginning balance of $77,737, and after the budgeted income and expenses, will add to reserves by approximately $7,014. So this is a much more balanced fund with adding to reserves for the first time in a couple of years. We were going to increase the cost of trash from $14 a month to $15.50 per month. So we do have that $1.50 increase built in there. Before we added the $1.50 increase in there, we were set to deficit spend, which would have left the fund with not even enough to pay 1 month's worth of the waste collection bill. So that's clean in and out for the most part. All of the fees that we collect go right back out to Rumpke for the most part. We do take a little bit towards the administrative cost for our utility billing clerk, but it's mostly a clean in and out. So this will at least leave us with at least 2 months worth of trash bills in our reserves. The next is the water fund. It's got a beginning balance for 2020 estimated at $2,575,233. After our budgeted income and expenses for the year, we will look at adding about $39,823 into reserves, bringing that estimated ending balance to $2,615,056. So the water fund continues to remain healthy into 2020 with adding that almost $40,000 to reserves. There is no rate increase scheduled for water, and the last one that we had was in 2011. So then if we take a closer look at our revenues by source, the main driver of our revenues, of course, are property taxes at 47%. Second is 33%, which are charges for service. So those are our water and our trash fees that come in. And then the third is intergovernmental at 17%, which is like our local government fund, state property taxes received, cigarette taxes, liquor and beer, permit fees. So those are minimal, and then below that are all less than 2% in fines and permit fees, investment earnings, miscellaneous and special assessments, which weren't even enough to really register. The next slide is where your property tax dollar goes. I think that this is a really great graphic that the previous city manager and finance director had created, and it's definitely worth updating every year just to show folks where their money goes. So this is based off of the 2018 residential effective tax rates, which were collected in 2019. Not all of the levies and everything are certified for 2019 to be able to look at what that would look like for the 2019 taxes collected in 2020. So this is always a year behind. So if we take a look at the property tax dollar, you can see how that is split up, with the lion's share going to the school district at 52%, and we're second to that at 23.6% for the city, which equates to basically 24 cents of every dollar that you spend in your property taxes actually comes to the city. So the 2018 collections, that was 22.6%, and this year it's 23.6%. So it's another 1% higher. So and then behind the city of Bellbrook, we've got Greene County in the health district at 17%. And then we've got Greene County JVS at 4.4%, and then the Parks District at 2.7%. So then if we look at our property tax distribution from 2018 to 2019 based on a $100,000 home, this is also another good graphic that's been used for the last several years that I think is worth taking a look at. If you look at the overall difference, it's $114 more than what it was in 2018 and 2019, but when you look at just the city of Bellbrook, it's a $60 difference, and that absolutely equates to the money that was the difference in the fire levy that was put on the ballot. So it was $5.10 was what the estimated difference was, and it equated out to be $5 difference for a $100,000 home. So $60 difference for the city of Bellbrook from 2018 to 2019 because of that fire levy that happened in 2018. If we look at our city directed revenue, the bulk of that is from our property taxes, and then our charges for service, which are our water and waste fees. So if we look at 2012 costs and we compare that to 2020 costs, it's a $36 difference. Our waste fees are actually lower, even though we've had increases in 2020 and then one in 2019. Water rates are flat, and then the property taxes have changed slightly by about $40. So this is based on a $150,000 home value. If we look at the next slide on our 2020 budget breakdown, this total does not include our transfers. Our transfers are $425,000, which of that is $150,000 that's going to police, $250,000 to capital improvement fund, and then $25,000 to fire. So if we look at our expenditures by category, wages and compensation and fringe benefits are our personnel costs. If you add those two together, that's 59% of our total. And then that's followed behind contract services at 25%. So that the contract services are things like all of our city utilities, electric, water, internet, phones, things like that. Our IT costs, just general maintenance that we have on just different things with all of the buildings and things that we have. And then behind that, we've got our capital outlay at 9%, and then supplies and materials 4%, and then debt service and other very minor amounts at 2% and 1%. So if we look at what funds our expenses are coming from, the highest of all of the funds that our expenses are directed to are our police, and that's 30.5%. And then second is fire at 1.3 million, and then we've got water, which is third at 1.2 million. So those are the three highest categories of our expenditures by fund, and then the rest of them are all about $500,000 or so between service, general, and waste, and then other. And then if we take a look at our year-end fund balance for our property tax supported funds, and we try to project that out into the future, the next few years, those funds are going to be relatively flat. I've got a 2% decline in expenses, just because looking at the look back, there have been some years that we've added to reserves. There have been some years that have declined. So a 2% decline in those fund balances for all those property tax supported funds was a good average benchmark, which I plugged in here. So things are relatively flat with the property tax supported funds, which isn't anything new. If we take a look at our water fund, you can see that the reserves have continued to grow, and for not adding into a rate increase since 2011, that fund stays relatively stable, which is a good thing. I know that one of the things that some might look at, which is worth reminding people of, is the water fund is an enterprise fund, and it gets all of its money from our customer fees, and those customer fees can only be used for the water fund. We can't transfer those out to the general fund or any other fund that might need support, so those all have to stay with the water fund. But it is worth noting, it seems like there's a very large balance in that fund, but the cost of the water projects are really hefty. The Upper Hillside water main project that we did in 2018, I think that was at $1.5 million by itself. So painting of the water towers are going to be coming, and those are approximately $250,000 a piece just to paint a water tower, which is pretty pretty hefty expense. So the water infrastructure is very expensive to maintain. So even though that looks like it's a really healthy fund balance, which it is, some of the water projects can be really costly. So it's good to have that there in case we have any major issues.
Plus, we had a little spike in water fund with all the tap-in fees too that we've had for the Waterford landings.
Correct. Yes, we've had about $500,000 worth of tap-in fees that have come from some of those new developments in Sugar Creek that we provide water to. So lastly is our capital improvement program. We have two funds that provide monies towards our capital improvements. That's the actual capital improvement fund, which is funded by the general fund, and then we've got our water fund, which is self-sustaining. So we've got a total capital budget for 2020 of $608,200. That's a $133,000 increase over 2018, and then we'll kind of go through some of these and show where those are coming from. So the next slide shows the capital improvement program in terms of the actual capital improvement fund. So administration projects include finance software, new sound upgrade for the council chambers, workstations, and fuel system upgrade, which total $47,175. Then we have service. We upped the annual street repairs from the normal $150,000 that it's been for several years to $200,000. $150,000 of that will actually come out of the capital improvement fund, and we're allocating $50,000 to the streets fund because we had the increase in some of the fuel taxes. So we did take a look at that and allocate some extra to the street fund that hadn't typically paid for any of the annual street repairs. So the tentative list for 2020 is Bellmead, Fowler, Lindley, Justin Court, Plantation, and a section of Possum Run. So that's what's on the list now. Of course, the winter could wreak havoc on something and push it to a higher priority. So it's something that the Streets Department, Public Works takes a look at and tries to prioritize best they can. There's also a culvert lining on Beechwood Drive at $50,000. And then we've got the Northwest Street sidewalk improvements, which are part of the CDBG grant, which the city will pay $46,000, and we got a grant of $35,000, which should be completed early on in 2020. Next up, we have police. These are very minimal. They don't have any cruisers or any really large expenses. They have a couple MDTs, which are mobile data terminals or computers in the cars, for $20,000. They have $16,000 that's allocated towards weapons, and then they have miscellaneous furniture and fixes for $2,500. So $38,500 going to police, which is again very minimal. Next, we take a look at fire. We have $25,000 set aside for some architectural work to look at a fire station combination to move Fire Station 1 offices up to Fire Station 2 that's up on West Franklin Street. They've got some mobile laptops as well, Medicot loading system, new sign at Station 2, hose roller, self-contained breathing apparatus, and then a rescue tool. So they have a few more pieces of equipment this year, and that total is $137,000. Then we look at water, lastly, and we've got $30,000 earmarked towards the fire hydrant replacement program, which has been going on for the last couple of years. We've got $20,000 marked for GIS equipment and a data import, so this is actually going to be a really helpful project where we've got GIS coordinates for a lot of our infrastructure, but not all of it. So this would basically take those coordinates and it would upload it into an actual GIS system so that we can be a lot more exact in locating things at all of our infrastructure, actually, like our fire hydrants. I mean, we can even get down to doing street signs and things like that. So this is going to also provide us with a handheld where our staff will actually be able to go out and locate things and input those GIS coordinates immediately into the system, which will be great. And we've got water is sharing in the utility billing and finance software at $42,525, and then they've got a new pickup truck for $47,000. So water's got $139,525 in capital improvements. So that is the bulk of the finance budget presentation for 2020. And again, we've got all of the detail on the website, the entire budget book with all of the line item expenditures and revenues, and the capital program is all online on the finance page.
Thank you. Good report. Since this is a public hearing, do we have any comments from council with regards to ordinance number 2019-21?
I would just like to thank the city manager and the department heads for the time and effort that they put in developing it. I know that city council has had 2 or 3 work sessions on it. We spent a lot of time looking at this line item by line item. We want to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We don't make spending decisions lightly. We look at it very closely, and I think this is a good budget.
Forrest, any comments?
I think it's a great budget. You look at this budget, there's a lot of things you don't have any leeway with. You have to spend that money because there's certain things we have to do. And some of the items on here actually, in the long run, saves money. I mean, I look at that too, like the GIS improvement, that's gonna save money. You knock out a utility by digging and you don't know where it's at, that's expensive. So I think some of these things will actually, in the long run, help us out.
Very good.
Nothing to add. That's a
Done.
good report.
I was just gonna say that I think this slide, the green slide that shows the fund balance is kind of decreasing, it's because the city's main source of revenue is property tax. And so while I think there's a lot of talk about improving the downtown area and improving the businesses and all that, that's great. But as far as like property tax goes, that's not gonna help the city. So the city doesn't have an income tax, so the more money that the businesses make, that's good. That's good for them, but it doesn't mean that the city is going to get more dollars. So I just think that there's probably a lot of people that don't understand that. I do hope that the businesses do well. I do hope that the property values increase, and that may help us with our property tax problem. But actually, having the downtown businesses make more money doesn't help the city at all.
Thanks, Donna. Dr. Dave?
Nothing to add, Mayor.
Our budget's always interesting. It's like a gigantic puzzle. We first do the outside boundaries and we had to fill in the middle pieces. And without an income tax, we're very restricted on what we can do and how much flexibility we have. And obviously, we try to be very conservative. The last couple of years, we've always had always projected an overspend, but we've always ended up having an over savings event or whatever. So, I mean, we're usually very conservative about it, so hopefully it'll work out that way for us again this year. Good presentation. Given this is a public hearing, does anyone from the audience care to speak out with regards to ordinance 2019-21? And again, it is on the website, so if you want to see it in more detail, it's all out there. Anyone want to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. We have a motion with regards to ordinance 2019-21, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt motion 2019-21.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Mr. Edwards to adopt ordinance 2019-21, an ordinance approving the appropriations of the city of Bellbrook for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. This is seconded by Mrs. Seeger Lawson. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. Thank you. Next up is ordinance number 2019-22. Mrs. Sigurd Lawson, please.
Yes, ordinance number 2019-22. An ordinance amending ordinance 2019-14 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2019. Whereas the City of Bellbrook adopted the 2019 annual budget based on the best information available at the time, and whereas the additional or reduced costs have or will occur in some line items, which requires the amendment of various appropriation levels. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the 2019 appropriation levels and several of the funds listed below be amended as follows. 2019 appropriations, there are several line items, including general fund, police pension fund, several others. Grand total of all funds is $6,735,314. And then there are several adjustments. Total revisions is $51,000 for a total amended 2019 appropriations of $6,786,314. Section 2, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. So this is making adjustments to the 2019 budget because we have had changes since the last time we approved it.
Yes, so this basically is to make sure that we're covered for the end of the year. So I don't expect us to spend all of these things where there are lines that are having monies added to them. But if we spend more than what we have allocated, then that, gets us with the auditor's office. So most of this is just in case we need it for the end of the year, since this is the last pass of that, so. And we did have some reductions in the capital improvement fund. I know that the fire station, they added that sleeping quarters, and it was a huge savings over what we had originally allocated. So there were a couple of projects that came in under, so we were able to reduce that and kind of offset some of the others.
And this is a housekeeping item. We do this, this is our fourth time this year, give or take?
I think it's the second supplemental.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Given this is a public hearing, does anyone in council have any further comments with regard to ordinance 2019-22? Does anyone from the audience have any comments with regards to ordinance 2019-22? Seeing no one, I declare this hearing to be closed. We have a motion with regards to ordinance 2019-22, please.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2019-22.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson made a motion to adopt ordinance 2019-22, an ordinance to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2019. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. We have no introductions of ordinances, but we do have resolution 2019-EE. Dr. Van Veldhuizen.
Yes, Mayor. Resolution number 2019 EE is a resolution authorizing the transfer of funds for the year 2020. Whereas the City of Bellbrook has adopted its budget for the year 2020, and whereas the 2020 budget will require the transfer of money among various funds, and whereas the Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.14, requires transfers of funds to be approved by City Council, now therefore the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that the transfer of funds be made by the city manager as follows. And these are the transfers Melissa talked about in one of the earlier slides. They all come from the general fund. $250,000 will go to the capital improvement fund, $150,000 to the police fund, $25,000 to the fire fund, for a grand total of $425,000. Section 2, that the fund transfers shown as specific line items are hereby approved from and after the effective date of this resolution and may then be completed as determined by the city manager. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith.
Thank you.
So just part of the budget is standard, so in order to transfer funds, it takes a action by council, and that's what this is.
Any discussion on council from resolution 2019-EE? Seeing none, can we have a motion, please?
We'll make a motion.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Dr. Van Veldhuizen to adopt resolution 2019-EE, a resolution authorizing transfers for 2020. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. Next on the agenda is the city manager report. We're giving you more time tonight than usual.
Yeah, I should have taken Pam up on the water. So
You want one?
no, I'm fine. We're almost there, right? Last meeting we had talked about the FEMA meeting and the floodplain maps and things like that, and our website actually does have pages as they relate to the floodplain and the maps and the links and things like that. So I went through and I updated those pages and updated the links and things like that. So all of that information is on our website, which is good. So it's under planning and zoning. So if you go to departments, planning and zoning, there are actually pages for floodplain information that are on there. This is just worth staying in public. we had switched over to Office 365, so there was some hiccup with email. So if anybody had issues with email, or if somebody had sent an email that they might not have gotten a response to, I know that there were several days that we had some issues. So if you send an email to somebody on city staff or council and didn't get a response, maybe try resending it, just because we did have a little bit of a hiccup there. So we typically respond very quickly to email. So if there was a reason why somebody might have sent something and it went into a black hole, that's why. And we apologize for that hiccup. I just want to personally and publicly thank the Darts for their hard work in the windows. I think that it looks really awesome. I don't know how many times I've been honked at because I start looking at it and then I realize that the light turned green. So I think that it's really beautiful, and it's a welcome addition to downtown. So thank you very much for all your hard work. And then last but not least, thank you to council members McGill and Seeger Lawson. It's been great to work with you guys, and we're going to miss your presence on council as a staff. So thank you very much for everything that you guys have done. And that's it for me.
Anybody have questions of the city manager?
I read a statement that each property owner would receive a letter for floodplain. Do you know about when that might happen?
Well, the maps won't be adopted until 2021, so I know that there were timelines for revisions and things like that, so I'm not sure what the final date would be that they would actually be adopted. I thought it was spring of 2021, so we would have to wait until the final maps are adopted, I would imagine. But there was somebody from FEMA that could give us all of the parcel numbers that were going to be affected, whether or not it was coming onto their property or retreating from their property, so that we could send notification letters. But it'll probably be a while because things could change. I don't look for things to change too much, because unless you have an engineered report that shows different information than what FEMA has, it's not going to change. They were mostly asking at least city officials to look to make sure that street names are right and things like that, looking at clerical errors. But unless you have an engineered report, which some people might have had an engineer look at their property for floodplain issues, those could be submitted and that could change. So, but it's going to be kind of a long process. So
Okay.
when we might send out those letters, I imagine it would be closer to the time that those maps would be finalized and adopted, which will be a little while, unfortunately. But the information's out there now.
So what's out there now is not really something to put your money on.
It's, I mean, again, unless you have an engineered,
Yeah.
you know, unless your property had some unique issues where you were gonna pay for an engineer to come out and do a study that's more recent than their study, then it's probably gonna be what it is that we see today.
It'd be nice if we could just take that question out of people's minds. They want to invest or buy real estate, you know. Because that's a big expense, especially, well, if you have a mortgage, I mean, that could be hateful, so. That's all I got.
Thanks, for some best have comments or questions of the city manager report? Seeing none, let's move on to committee reports. Service,
Nothing tonight.
safety,
Christmas season, be safe. Christmas cheer is great, be careful. So I hope everybody really has an enjoyable holiday. I hope the city staff takes a break. They've had a rough year, a busy year, and I'd just like to thank everybody from the city. That's all I have.
thanks, Forrest. Finance and audit,
Nothing more tonight, Mayor.
thank you. Community affairs, Elaine.
Nothing more. We do have 2 positions on the museum board that need to be staffed, so I believe we have 1 applicant, or do we have 2?
Well,
Okay.
we have 2, yeah.
Okay, so the museum is, as I mentioned earlier, is open during December for the regular hours, and we are serving cookies and hot chocolate, and you can have your picture taken on the Red Rambler toboggan that's down there. You can take your picture. We're not taking pictures. You can sit out and take your own picture. And then the museum, and it is the rotating gallery is set up with Christmas decorations, so we're all ready for Christmas. And then January and February, the open hours. It's closed except for a private scheduled tour if you need to, but folks will still be working there, getting more things categorized and photographed and maintenance type work done. When not too many people come to the museum anyway, so it's January and February, it's typically closed, so. Come down and see your museum, it's all about Bellbrook.
Thank you, Elaine. Next is old business. We have none. New business, I don't believe we have any. That brings us to open discussion of council. Nick?
As this is our last meeting of the year, I'd just like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's, and hope everyone has a safe holiday season. That's it.
Thank you. Forrest?
I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I'd like to thank Donna Seeger Lawson for your service. I really appreciate it. I think you've been great. You made a lot of great decisions, brought in a lot of good things to the council. I'll miss you. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Elaine?
Same happy holidays to everyone, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I want to thank Donna for her service as well. It's going to be different being the only woman on the council now. So, thank you.
Thanks. Donna?
Just Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's been great to be on council. Just trying to get through this without getting upset. But I spent 8 years on council. We've been through a lot. Some of it not very important, some of it very important. I wrote down a few things that we've dealt with since I've been either on council or on the planning board. We've dealt with whether or not people should have chickens in their backyards. We've dealt with whether or not the city should legislate how many dogs or cats you should have, which that was a very heartbreaking, heartwarming situation. We dealt with a water pumping station that was in the water system, fixing various roads, talking about Little Sugar Creek. I'm worried about whether or not that's going to have some additional problems. Walkability of the community. We had new dispatch operations. We've had a new police chief. We've had a new fire chief, a new city manager, a new service director, all in the 8 years that I've been here.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. So I've enjoyed it. I hope you guys will see me around. So I might be sitting out in the audience from now on. Not every meeting, but. So,
Thank you, Donna. Dr. David?
Right, well, as the others, I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and also Donna, thank you for your service. And even though he's on vacation tonight, I'd like to thank Darrell McGill also for his service. Over the last few years, I sat on planning board. Darrell would show up now and then, and he was a great mentor, great source of advice as to just how to deal with certain situations and learning more about city government. I say part of me being up here today is due to Darrell, so I thank him for both his military and his civil service to the community.
Thank you, thank you. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and this is the beginning of the holiday season, so maybe have a very safe holiday. Nobody violate the drinking and driving rules. I know we had Ralph Fuster on council for years, and he talked about that at length, and I want to kind of continue that thought process. Secondly, I want to thank Donna for years of service. She brings a lot of experience to the city, and also want to thank Darrell McGill. We're losing two assets that had a knowledge and were heavily involved in the city for a number of years at not only council, but also the board level. So it's kind of going to be a big miss for us, I think. But we got two anxious guys ready to jump in and help out. I think it'll be change is always good. Transition's always a little bit tough, but we're going to miss you, Donna. We're going to miss Darrell as well. So thank you very much. That being the case, we're now going to open for open discussion from the audience. And I don't know how many of you get the Dayton Daily News anymore, but there was an interesting article in the paper on Saturday with regards to the comments made in the general open discussion part of the City of Dayton Commissioner meetings. And they're looking at what the rules are going to be, and I think we're going to try to stay close with them to find out if we need to change our rules. I know people sometimes don't like how city staff operates, don't like things we're doing. I would ask that you bring those comments to any member of council or to myself, and not necessarily in an open meeting like we do, and like we've done, several times. I think that open discussion should be for items of general interest. If you have very specific about our employees, which we have two, Melissa and Pam, and I think council should be the people that should be behind them and should deal with them, and if you have problems, by all means, bring them up and address them with council. That being the case, we now open the floor open discussion for anybody from the viewing audience. Pastor Saban.
wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Melissa, I thought you did a great job on the budget presentation. Merry Christmas, and take a big breath. I've been in the corporate world for many years, and budget time's never a fun time, so. I love this town. We love serving here. Bellhop will be celebrating our 10th anniversary next April, and we've enjoyed the opportunity to be a conduit and kind of a catalyst in a lot of ways in the community. We've seen some incredible events this year that we've been able to co-sponsor with the Bellbrook Sugar Creek Ministerial Association, the Optimist Club, for Bellbrook by Bellbrook, for Bellbrook by Design, a lot of things that we've had an opportunity to be a part of, and we're very grateful for that. In partnership with the Ministerial Association, we do the annual National Day of Prayer event on the first Thursday in May. We do the Good Friday crosswalk, initiate that, the Easter Sunday service in Bellbrook Park. We just had the Thanksgiving service together as community of faith. It's our privilege to be able to serve the community with the other pastors in the community. It's a very unique situation we have where there's such a great amount of unity among those who serve. 2 events coming up. Chris had alluded to the Christmas in the Park. As part of that, we're assembling a group of carolers, and we like to invite the community at large to join us. We'll be meeting at Bellhop at 5:30 next Saturday. We'll be then passing out some of the material, the songs and so forth, and then walking from Bellhop over to the park at 6:15. We get to take the stage for 15 minutes and sing some Christmas carols. From there, those who would like to continue along with us will walk down to Main and the corner of Main and Franklin. And it's been a great opportunity this year. I've loved what the Dart family has done with the windows there. We're going to do some Christmas caroling in front of the window displays. And from there, we'll return back to Bellhop for a free hot chocolate bar and some Christmas entertainment by a young lady, Julia May, who's a beautiful, gifted voice. So we invite the community to gather with us for that. Another event that I'm very excited about. Most of you know Karen Long. Karen will be assuming a position on the school board in January. She's had a lot of involvement with the sensory, developmentally challenged community, and she came to us about hosting a Bellbrook Sensory Santa event. Many children and even young adults or even adults have issues with overstimulation and so forth, but they still have a desire to have a picture with Santa and so forth. So Karen's husband serves as the Santa, and they'll be there at Bellhop, as it says on this flyer, from 3 to 4:30, maybe longer, depending on how many show up. It's getting a lot of interest, where they'll have an opportunity to, in a quiet, controlled location, be able to get their picture taken with Santa, and also have free hot chocolate and so forth while they're there. So we encourage you to pass the word to those that you think might be interested in that. I'm really excited to be able to take part of that and be a host. So with that, Merry Christmas. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve in this great community.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else care to speak? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? Lou's coming up front and center. The cameraman.
I'm Louis Schatzberg. I live at 4082 Ridgetop Drive. I just want to thank Donna and Daryl for a job well done. They did a very professional job up here the years that they've served. I've served with Donna on the planning board, and it was a good time there. And wish everybody a Merry Christmas and thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Does any member of council have any other business to come before us tonight? Seeing none, I declare this meeting's adjourned.